I'll see you guys in the dark.
This all started my sophomore year of high school. I was 15 and at a new school, so I didn't have any friends yet. I was in that phase where I thought I needed a boyfriend to have validation, so I was actively trying to find a date for the homecoming dance. A classmate suggested a junior in one of our classes, whom I will call David, to be my date, and got him to ask me out. He seemed nice, so I said yes, a decision that would haunt me for the next 2 years. David and I had fun at homecoming, so when he asked me to be his girlfriend, I said yes. It's important to note that he was quite the loner. He was very much into science and often spent time alone conducting experiments in his room, and even at school at times. I just brushed it off as him being quirky and figured I shouldn't get in the way of his passions. But it wasn't long before I realized there was much more to this nice guy facade. Over the first several weeks of our relationship, we would talk over the phone, and David would make increasingly inappropriate comments about things he wanted to do to me. I was 15 at the time, and he was 17, so not only was I incredibly uncomfortable, but he was also nearly an adult himself making these comments to a younger girl. I kept telling him I wasn't comfortable with the things he was saying, but he always laughed them off as me being a prude. I was fed up after a while, and finally threatened to break up with him, and that finally made him stop. I should have recognized the red flags and bailed at that moment, but again, I was dumb, and felt I wasn't worth anything unless I had a boyfriend. Although the inappropriate comments stopped for the time being, he would still become increasingly possessive, and downright obsessed over what I was doing at all hours of the day. He would intrude on conversations I had with my friends, and want to know things that frankly weren't any of his business. One day, when I was getting into the shower, he called, and my dad told him I would call him when I was done. Instead of simply waiting like any rational person would do, he called a total of 4 times over the next 10 to 15 minutes to see if I was out of the shower yet. I began to feel suffocated, but every time I asked him to back off, he would cry about how depressed he was, and that he only wanted to talk to someone to feel like he was wanted. I always fell for it like the dummy I was, but now I recognize the clear manipulation that it was. One day I finally had enough. I broke up with him in person at school, and he bawled like a child. I didn't let it get to me this time, and I firmly told him that I didn't want to be his girlfriend anymore. Although he wouldn't get his way, he still somehow convinced me to stay friends. I know, I was an idiot for this, but things didn't end there. Oh no, dear readers, we are only just beginning. Over the next several months, David kept trying to get me to go out with him again, and even going as far as to cry in front of other people to garner sympathy. He even tried starting rumors about us having sex, which we didn't, fortunately for me. David had earned a bad reputation throughout his school career, so no one really believed him. He would even try to trick me into a date by suggesting we go to see a movie as friends, which I always got around by inviting my friends to come along too. They knew what he was doing and never turned down the chance to help a girl out. In the last few weeks I spoke to him, he would sit on the phone for hours on end, literally begging me to take him back. And thankfully I held on strong and kept refusing him. One night, his brother actually called me, telling me he was crying hysterically. Eventually it came to a point where I told him I didn't want to hang out with him anymore, because it was clear that he would not stop until I became his girlfriend again. He agreed to not approach me anymore, but I couldn't be writing the story if it just ended here. The very next day at school, David came up to me like nothing had ever happened. I once again reminded him of the conversation we had had the night before, about how he agreed not to hang out anymore, but he acted offended that I would even suggest such a thing. Eventually my friends and I convinced him to leave, but of course, it didn't stop there. For 2 weeks straight, he would follow me around school, call my house and my cell phone. This was the day before smartphones, so blocking his number wasn't as easy. I tried to get help from the school staff, but the vice principal basically told me that there was nothing I could do because he wasn't trying to hurt me. I was frustrated, but thankfully David seemed to back off when it was clear that I wasn't going to give in. That is until I got another boyfriend. The following school year, my junior year, I started dating a senior named Justin. Not long after we went public with our relationship, I noticed David following me again. Now Justin was a football player, and he was a pretty big guy with unresolved anger issues, so he didn't take kindly to this guy. He would hang out with me and my friends, and David would hover over nearby, walking by every now and then, making it blatantly obvious that he was spying on me. One day, Justin walked straight up to David and confronted him. He didn't lay his hands on him or threaten him in any way, but he did ask, "What are you doing?" in a really angry-like tone. David simply muttered some kind of excuse and scurried away. We thought that was the end of it. But later in the day, I was called to the principal's office. Turns out David claimed that Justin threatened him and blocked the doorway so that he couldn't move. Justin denied it, of course, and told the principal I could back up his claim, which I did. Thankfully, nothing came out of it. But this was only the first of a long line of incidents. Over the school year, David and his brother, who was a year younger than me, would try to get Justin in trouble every which way they could, even starting rumors and threatening his life. A classmate of mine overheard them talking about ambushing Justin and hurting him. But even though I brought this to the staff, nothing was done about it. All the while, David kept following me when Justin wasn't around. There was even an incident in school gym one day when a bunch of classes had to stay there in the period. He and I were both there, and he made sure to sit on the bleachers nearby, even following me when I moved. I was on the verge of tears, but then I saw two guys I knew sitting a few rows down from me. They were cool with me, so I got their attention, and after explaining what was going on, asked them if I could sit with them to feel safer. They accepted, and we ended up having a good time talking about music and anime. In spite of this, things just kept getting worse with David. Finally, it came to a head when David's brother wrote a letter to Justin's sister. They had been good friends before this whole mess started, and in the letter, David's brother threatened physical harm to me and to Justin. The sister gave the letter to Justin, who then came to me, and we both brought it to the principal. That was when the principal called everyone involved into the office and had a nice little chat with us. The principal showed the letter to David's brother and said, "I can expel you for this right now, but I am willing to let this go on one condition." David and Justin were both about to graduate, so the principal gave them the ultimatum. He stated that David and his brother were not to contact me or Justin in any way, shape, or form for the rest of the school year, or he would see to it that neither of them would graduate. I was pissed, because Justin did nothing wrong, but in the end, we just wanted this whole mess to be over with. From that point on, David didn't even bother me again, thankfully, but I am still filled with anxiety to this very day. He made me afraid for my life, even made me afraid to walk the halls of the school. Justin and I ended up breaking up that summer for unrelated reasons, and the following year, I didn't have to see either of them ever again. A few years later, however, David tried to send me a friend request on Facebook. I had an immediate panic attack, and not only deleted the request, but I blocked him as well. I even unfriended and blocked the two mutual friends we had for good measure. Sure, I was being paranoid, but it made me feel a lot better. There was one last incident, involving David, but not with me, but with the younger brother. When he was 14, he took his then-girlfriend to see one of the Transformers movies, and David walked in. Upon recognizing my brother, he sat behind him and his date, and kept laughing uncontrollably at inappropriate times, and even started kicking their seat. My brother tried confronting him, but it did no good. They didn't bother getting the manager, because my brother's date was too afraid he would attack them if they tried to leave. Thankfully, that was the last incident I, or anyone close to me, ever had with him. I'm doing much better now. I'm 30 years old now, and ironically, I ended up marrying one of the guys who sat with me in the gym that day. My advice to any teenagers reading this is that you should always pay attention to red flags and get rid of toxic people in your life. It's always better to end up alone than stuck with somebody who makes you feel bad and treats you like your feelings don't even matter. And as for David, let's never meet, ever again. This took place a couple of years ago, but believe me when I tell you, it's still very relevant. A year ago, I met a guy at a bar. He called himself Joy. Kind of ironic. I wasn't looking for anything serious, and apparently neither was he. We got along great and started hooking up until things started to get pretty weird. He began being more intimate, telling me about his life, and specifically about his ex-girlfriend that killed herself not even a year ago. I honestly felt bad for him, and tried to comfort him, telling him it wasn't his fault. At some point, I don't really know when, we became exclusive. We weren't a proper couple, but we decided not to sleep with anyone else, or so I thought. I found out he had been seeing other women, and I was honestly pissed. For me, honesty is a very important thing, and he seemed to be toying around with me. I made up my mind and ended it with him, to which he didn't even seem to care. Now I was kind of sad and angry at myself, since I felt played with, and I should have known better. That didn't last long, though, since he kept texting me like usual, asking me to hang out as normal. I told him that I wasn't interested, and that I honestly didn't want to waste my time anymore. Things got creepy. He accused me of seeing someone else, said I was dishonest, and even called me names like slut and what else. I wouldn't have it. I told him he was mental, and that he should stay away from me. He threatened to end himself. At this point, it was beyond clear to me that he was either on drugs or mentally unbalanced. Either way, because I had a history with suicide, I was really triggered by that. The thought of someone I know dying and me not doing anything about it wouldn't really let me sleep, even if it was just blackmail. So I texted one of his friends and told him to just check on him. A couple of days pass, and he calls me saying he was sorry, that it has been a rough couple of weeks for him, and that he really wanted to see me at least just to talk. I naively accepted. We decided to meet up at a bar we used to go to, and we mostly sat in silence. I was still kind of hurt, and in no way I was planning to get back with him. I guess I just wanted to know he was okay. The few words we exchanged were to order our drinks and some fries. It was almost as if he was ignoring me, and I got tired pretty quick. I finished my beer, left my part of the money on the table, and I told him to have a good life. As I was leaving, even more pissed than before, I heard someone running behind me. Tired, I turned to face someone who was probably him and felt a cold shiver down my spine when I saw the look on his face. It was honestly like he was possessed. He caught up to me and shoved me to the wall with his hand on my throat. "You're not going to leave me like that," he yelled, squeezing his hand. Now, never in my life had I been in a situation like this before, so the fear paralyzed me. But bless the waiter who ran after this maniac because he didn't pay off the rest of the bill. I guess he had some experience with troublemakers, because in a few seconds, he had him locked down under his arm. I rested against the wall, crying and coughing while the waiter called for help. I thanked him, but left for home immediately. I only told my best friend what had happened, and my fear turned to anger. I wanted to rip that guy apart, but I'm smarter than that. I'm 160 centimeters, and I didn't exercise in any way. If someone was going to be ripped apart, it was definitely going to be me. So I let it pass, under the condition that if he contacted me again, I would find the way to end him. He never contacted me again. Why am I telling this story now? Well, about 2 months ago, I saw him, not in person, but on TV. He's being accused of a number of murders of 3 girls, who, according to the investigation, were his girlfriends at the time. He's being classified as a serial killer, and the year he was inactive between the last and the second to last was the year we went out. Why didn't I report it to the police? I tried. However, they told me I was useless, since I haven't seen him in years. I'm not afraid anymore, but I'm sad. I'm sad thousands of women, especially in my country, get hurt every year, and very few people take the time to find the responsible. Dear Joy, I'm not the insecure, weak girl I was back then, so for your sake, let's not meet again, or I'll just make justice happen myself.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.